Hey everyone, welcome back to New Slang. I am music journalist Thomas Mooney, your faithful host. You're listening to episode 98, where I am joined by one of my favorite songwriters, Aubrie Sellers. Aubrie released her second album, Far From Home, way back in early February. What I really like about Aubrie's songwriting, sound, and style is just how it's fierce, and there's typically like a huge force behind these elements. Now, I don't want you to confuse her being bold for just like bashing you over the head with these like rock and roll, rock star kind of moments. That's not necessarily what I mean. There are those moments, but that's not necessarily what I mean by bold. There's these intimate moments. There's these times where she kind of draws back the curtain and shows that natural vulnerability of like the human condition. But even in those moments, there's this sharpness to them. There's this kind of this shimmering, steely glow. What I really like about this album is how the sonic qualities really channel what she's singing about. If she's being really, really bold and really confident, the music reflects that. If she's being really, really vulnerable or talking about an intimate moment, she's kind of putting them in this like atmospheric bubble where it's almost whispery in a way. They went out to Sonic Ranch to cut this record, so there's this desert aura to it as well that they kind of capture, and they really embrace that warmth. I know Aubrie has often dubbed her music as quote-unquote garage country, and she really hones in on what that is, like what the heart of what quote-unquote garage country is. What I think that is like they focus in on these like really raw elements, one of them being Aubrie's vocals, and in turn, that means there's a focus on her lyrics. I really love how crystal clear her vocals typically are. They're always out in front and she never gets lost in the mix. And another one of those really raw elements is how sharp the guitars are. They're really steely, and sometimes like they just feel like shards of glass coming at you. At times, all of those can feel like the mood setter, the tone setter of a song, and then at other times they can feel like they are just part of the puzzle. Far From Home is really kind of like if you took the Dead Weather's first album and blended it with Loretta Lynn's Van Leer Rose. As a fan of albums, I encourage you to start every album from the beginning, but if you insist on a sampling first, check out the song Haven't Even Kissed Me Yet. It's really kind of like the epitome of all those vibrant elements that I've been talking about. Before we get started, if this is your first time listening to New Slang, I highly encourage you to hit that subscribe button. New Slang is currently on virtually every podcast platform there is, so you'll be able to find it on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, and so on. I'd also highly appreciate if you gave the podcast a 5-star rating, write a review. If you do, tell me who have been your favorite guests, and then also mention who you think I should be trying to get on. Follow me on all the social media platforms to further the music conversation. I'm at _New Slang on Twitter and Instagram. It's just New Slang on Facebook. And sorry, no TikTok. That's just a bridge too far for me. All right, I hope y'all enjoy it. Here is Aubrie Sellers. I guess we can start out with, obviously you just released this new record at the beginning of the year. You released it well before like the quarantine or anything like that. But it's obviously affected you having to pause going on tour and everything. What have you done to, I guess, like, have you just had to like just put everything on pause, or has it been more like just up in the air or full out canceled, or what's kind of been your...
The record came out February 7th, so it was before it, but it wasn't too far before it. I mean, it was just a couple weeks in that it started becoming apparent that things were canceling, like the NBA canceled and then South by Southwest. And I kind of had a feeling pretty early on that even if we could go on this tour I had really 3 tours that I was doing. One was my tour. That was the big one, of as far as how many shows I was playing and all that, and then it was my headlining shows with Lily May. But it kind of became apparent to me that even if we could technically go on tour, that, I didn't think that people were going to come out. And so I remember saying pretty early on, I felt like it wasn't going to happen. And then, but of course we didn't want to jump the gun on it. So we just waited. And kind of waited to see what was happening, and then more and more festivals were canceling all the way into next year, and then it just became apparent that it obviously we couldn't even do it if we wanted to, but I'm not sure I would have wanted to anyway, just because, you know, for the health and safety of not only people coming out to the shows, but my band and us. And so we've been, you know, doing live streams like everybody else, and doing interviews and things like that. But it does kind of feel like it just stopped everything, you know. And I know it's a weird year to put out a record. I know I'm not the only person that's going through that. And so, you know, I was lucky to be able to play a few shows at the beginning of the year, but the majority of my touring has been canceled for the foreseeable future into next year, probably. So, yeah, it's a weird time, and I've been spending a lot of time doing other stuff as well. You know, I'm going back to school, and you know, I've been working on my camper. I have a Shasta camper, and just kind of trying to stay busy. And my grandmother started a mask business on Etsy. She's been selling masks, and so I've been helping her with that and just kind of adapting.
Yeah, it seems like the people who have just adapted well to this have been the ones who have found something else to fill the time with.
Yeah.
Obviously, like,
I
just
think I would be going nuts if I was only focused on, you know, my record. And of course, that's obviously a huge focus for me still, but there's just only so much you can do. You know, most of our business now as artists is touring centric, you know, and so it's just kind of like there's nothing we can do about it. So you gotta adapt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, I guess, like back in the day, you know, you made a record so you could go on tour, or you'd go on tour because you made a record, and then now it's like the other way around. So it's, but it's been interesting seeing people, talking with people lately, because they've found other things to fill their time, and whatever it can be to create some structure in their life. Because like, even with me, like, doing more podcasts has given me structure, because like writing has kind of just dwindled down simply because, you know, there's not as much. It seems weird because there's a lot more stuff to write about, but like there's less places to write about this stuff. So then but it's just been doing more podcasts and stuff and more interviews. But, you know, you're not like the first person to have mentioned finding other things to occupy their time. How has it been artistically though? Has it meant more writing, or has it meant more doing anything musically or artistically?
Yeah. You know, I've worked on a couple demos for things, which is not something I normally do. I don't normally make demos before I make a record. I normally just have the work tape of the song and then go in and record it. And so I've been doing a couple things that I don't normally do. And I've been working on another project that I'm going to put out as well during this time. But yeah, I've really kind of taken. It's hard for me since I just put out a record and was so geared up to go into promo mode and like touring and all that I don't really feel like I'm in the space yet or ready yet to like work on a new record, or, you know, I just don't feel like I'm ready for that. So I've been working a little bit on it, but it's not like that's where my head is at really at this time.
Yeah. Like I imagine that whenever you put out a record, because like for me, after I finish an article or something, I always feel like my brain is mush, like right after. Like I just like,
yes.
Okay, I'm exhausted by putting all this energy into this idea. I imagine that's the same way for a song, or, you know, tenfold when it's a record, because you're just kind of like, you had put all this creative juice into this one thing, and then, you know, obviously you release this record, and but it's such a weird time obviously now because of just like a simple pause. Like it feels like everyone wants you to put a pause on life, but then like there's not really. It's weird because like time is still passing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's for sure how it is for me. Like, you know, I kind of put my brain into different modes, you know what I mean? And for sure, when I spend a lot of creative energy on something, I definitely have to get I work on things in kind of bursts, and so I'm definitely not the kind of slow and steady kind of worker. I'll work on something for 2 weeks and work on it more intensely than anyone has ever worked on something before. Like that's kind of how I work. And so, I feel like I have to be in the right headspace to do that kind of stuff. And so, and I just don't feel the inspiration right now to fully throw myself into making a new project like you're saying. And and I feel like when I work on something, it can be kind of draining, like you said. Like I don't feel like I have the inspiration or the creative juices or whatever flowing that I need to create something that I'm proud of.
Yeah, you mentioned your camper. Like I know you've been posting some photos and stuff like that. I was actually going to ask you about that. Like what's I guess the camper story? Are you what is your goal with having the camper and everything?
Yeah, I bought it. I've had it for a while. Actually, when I was younger, I was obsessed with RVs. I don't know if it's because I grew up on a tour bus or what, but like I just love the idea of having your house on wheels. And so I found this Shasta camper maybe 5 years ago, and they only made about 100 of this specific one that I have, and then the company that made them got bought out, so they just stopped making them. So it's actually kind of hard to find them and find information on them because they're so rare. But but I was obsessed with RVs when I was little. I remember calling there was like an RV commercial that used to play on TV, and I called and got their brochure and stuff. And so I've just been obsessed with that stuff since I was a little girl. And so anyway, when I found this one, I was super excited about it. My mom had an Airstream, and so I'm just, I'm kind of used to the camper lifestyle. And I just find it really fun to have your house on wheels and take it wherever. So I've had it. It's been sitting I moved out to California 2 years ago, and it's been sitting in my dad's house in Tennessee. So I picked it up finally, and I'm taking it out there, and I'm kind of at the halfway point right now in Texas, and I'm just fixing it up and cleaning it out and getting it ready again because it's been sitting for a while. And since touring probably isn't going to be a thing for a while, I just figured I'd have more time to travel and do that kind of stuff for fun this year, and maybe I'll be inspired and kind of fill my cup again.
Yeah, is that is partly part of this, like, I don't know, like the decluttering of life stuff, like is it Marie Kondo, like the
what is that called? Spark joy.
Yeah. Like, yeah, does it spark
yeah, I mean, that always feels good to me to kind of clean everything out and kind of take care of I think a lot of people right now are taking care of a bunch of stuff that they, kind of put on the back burner or whatever. And I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I thought that I was kind of having trouble figuring out how I was going to get it all the way out to LA from Tennessee, because I didn't want to drive my truck all the way to Tennessee and then all the way back out to California and blah, blah, blah. So it just kind of worked out perfectly. My dad ended up bringing it to me at the halfway point, and so it just worked out and gave me something to do. And I'm excited to bring it up and down the West Coast, because I think like the Northwest is some of the prettiest scenery in the whole country.
Yeah, I've always kind of liked RVs and camper trailers too. And like we had one growing up, and it just felt weird though when like my dad sold it. Like I felt like slightly betrayed in a way. Like,
yeah.
How could you give this up? And I think we ended up getting another one soon thereafter. But like I don't know. I've always kind of been like I'm probably too attached to things to like fully live in a camper trailer or anything like that, or in a mini home.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not going to live in it full time.
Yeah.
I mean, I could, but my boyfriend is a musician and has a ton of studio gear and stuff like that. And so, I mean, even if I wanted to, he couldn't. I can pretty much live without stuff. The only thing I have a lot of is books. And I also have 2 cats, and I don't think they want to live in a little camper.
Yeah. Do you know Emily Scott Robinson by chance?
I know of her, yeah.
Okay, so I did a podcast with her a couple weeks back, and she and her husband live in a trailer, and they've lived in it for a couple years. But like we had like this hour-long conversation about the tiny home aspects of it all, and yeah, like I think she said like they're looking to like not live in it anymore soon after after this, but like it was a good experience. And I don't know, it's I still, like, when I was talking to her, I'm like, I don't know if I can just give up all this stuff that I've have now. So
Totally. I mean,
it's,
you put it in storage. I thought about it. I thought, because, honestly, having this tour canceled and everything, I thought, good Lord, I don't know what LA is expensive to live in, and I just didn't know. And I thought, if I had to, could I move everything into storage and live in this, and I think I could, but mine's pretty small. Theirs is probably bigger. And I would also say if I lived alone, then I might be able to do it. But with the both of us and the two cats, I think it might drive me insane. We like to have our own space to do stuff and decompress. And I'm pretty introverted, so I need like an absurd amount of alone time and like time to recharge. So I'm not sure if I could do it full time and stay sane with someone else.
Right. Yeah. Like it is so weird because like I feel like you have to have like that. You have to have like your own little space within that space. And if it's so small, then you're just like on top of each other. And, I guess like one of the aspects of that is the tiny home is supposed to push you out into nature and stuff. But, I don't know, like it's, it's so easy to like just sit in front of the TV or like in front of or just wherever you can listen to music or anything. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, let's move on to your record. You recorded this over near El Paso at Sonic Ranch.
Yeah.
I've obviously heard there's plenty of stories about how amazing that place is to create a record. Just like the atmosphere and the scenery or lack thereof, and what was that like for y'all, making this record out there and just kind of getting away from the usual to make a record?
For sure. I was very inspired, kind of leading up to this record by a lot of what I call desert music, very kind of like Quentin Tarantino soundtracks, and like the Ventures in Space record, which, I know there's surf rock, but I feel like that record in particular is kind of spacey and deserty sounding to me. And so I've been listening to a lot of stuff like that. And when I heard about the studio, I was like, this seems like the perfect place to go. And also I just love the fact that, you all go there together and you stay there the whole time you're tracking. And so, you're fully in making this record, and everybody's getting outside of Nashville. And, I really do think that your surroundings affect what you're making and, kind of help you get into a new headspace. And it felt a little bit like, especially in Nashville, since everyone, makes music full time, it can get a little routine, I think, there, and become kind of more like a regular job. And I think doing something like this, going somewhere like Sonic Ranch, kind of takes you out of that and just puts your head into a new space. And so it was really fun. And I like the fact that we could all be there and immerse ourselves, so that was the first time I'd done that. The first record we made was in Nashville at a studio there, and that was great too. But yeah, I just thought not only was it cool for us all to be there together, but it was cool that there was a studio that kind of fit that vibe that I was feeling. And I really do think that it influenced the way it sounded, and I think it fit kind of what I had in my head as a vision for this record.
Yeah, there's something very just special about a quote unquote like destination record. It feels very much like you have to like focus, like it's great that is like the focus of the time that you spent there, and it's not necessarily feeling like you're cut and pasting a record together, but it more feels like you're recording an event or something.
Yeah. I was talking to someone about that the other day, and for me, like, I love records that sound cohesive, records that sound like they were intentionally a record, if that makes sense. They're sonically cohesive, yeah. And they feel like you want to sit down and listen to the whole thing. And those are the records that I loved, like Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, Raising Sand, and the record that Jack White produced for Loretta Lynn, Van Leer Rose, and records that really feel like albums and cohesive pieces of music. So anyway, yeah, I love records that you can sit down and listen to. And so I know that maybe I won't be able to make another record like that. I mean, it's something that, I know it's a way of recording that a lot of people don't do anymore, and sometimes isn't accessible because, it costs money to track like that. And I happened to be on a major label when I made this record. So, who knows if I would be able to do it again, but it was a really great experience. And if you can make a record that way, it's the way I like to do it for sure.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned like the deserty kind of qualities. I feel like that's something that really sticks out on this record. I don't know, like it's just very atmospheric. It feels like you guys just kind of, what I think this is something that, I don't know, that's maybe, that sometimes we don't do when we're making records. I say we, I don't know why I'm saying we. I don't make records, but like sometimes like the outside the box idea is to just know exactly what this record's going to be, and then use like the tones and the textures that are in that box. You get what I'm saying? It felt like
Totally.
like this record is something that you guys used these 7 or 8 colors, and like that's what you guys created this record out of, without trying to be too far out on a certain song, or you know what I mean, or try and like make a record that's super totally diverse just for the sake of diversity and showing that you can do 8 different kinds of music stylings or something.
Totally. What's interesting to me is that, I tell everybody, I co-produce the record, and I tell everybody when I'm making the record kind of what I'm going for. And a lot of it just comes out of listening to the songs or whatever else. But, I don't like to give too much direction to players. I think it's more about getting the right players in the room and letting people play and letting it kind of happen organically, and then kind of nudging it in one direction or another. But what's funny to me is how much the record lines up with what I kind of, I guess, envisioned for it going in, without having to kind of lay it out black and white. Does that make sense? I think a lot of it's about getting in the room and getting the right people in the room. And when I have these people in the room that I've written a lot of these songs with, then that you naturally kind of line up as far as what your sonic influences are, and everybody just kind of got it, I think, on another level. And so it's really cool, I think, to be able to get the right people in the room and have that happen organically, and make sure that you're just working with people who inspire you and are willing to play around and experiment. And that's what I think is special, is when something comes out of it that, to me, I've had people ask me, like, would you like to add this song to this record for a bonus track or blah, 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 after the fact. And I'll consider it, but then I just think, that was a moment in time. And I don't think tacking something onto the end of it would feel right to me, because it was such a moment that I feel like you can't really recreate. And I don't want to tarnish it by, throwing something else on there a year later or whatever,
Yeah. It's interesting to think of, like, I guess like this is one of those of the arts, like, to have that idea of your envision of what you want it to sound like, but then trying to get that across to actually make it happen. You mentioned that like this record sounded like what you wanted it to sound like, what you had in your head. How did that vision, I guess, morph over time and evolve?
Yeah. I made this record 3 years ago. So it's, remembering the entire process leading up to it is, it's kind of difficult for me because I have a terrible memory. But what's really funny is, almost actually everyone that played on this record played on my first record, except for one addition, who is Ethan Ballinger, who plays in my live band and is my boyfriend and has been playing with me for 5 years. And he was an addition on this record, and I think really added a lot to it. And so I think that's really a testament to how much, one, the environment we were in, 2, the songs that I had for this record, and 3, just adding one person in who, is bringing a little bit different flavor and new influences can kind of all make that much of a difference between what my first record sounded like and what this one sounds like. Now, I don't think it's that different because it's still me, you know, it's still kind of in the same world, but you can definitely hear kind of different touches and overlays, I think, because of those reasons. And so, yeah, I think that it's interesting how much little things can kind of make a big impact. And like I said, it's a moment in time. You know, it was, let's see, I made my first record in 2013 or something, and that was 4 years before I made this one. So, you know, even that space of time and all of these different factors can come in and really help you. So it's not like I got a new producer and, you know, a whole new band and anything like that. It's just all those other factors, I think, really came in to make this something special and different from the first record.
Yeah. I do think that like Ethan's playing has like a definite like texture added to the record. I guess like I don't really know him or anything like that, but where I know him is his work with Ryan Colwell and that last record that Ryan did, and I just felt like that you could just, I don't know, like I've known Ryan for a while, and that new record that he put out a couple years back, you could just, there was just this extra element that was added, and I think it's the same thing that you can apply to your record, just that. I don't know, like it feels like sometimes we, like people can just like fall into the same kind of guitar tones, and like people can just like, I feel like especially like in like local music scenes, you wind up having it where like these people like use the same guitar players, the same drummers,
yeah.
And like just all of that. At some point, it sounds like the same people because it is the same people, and it feels like this was such a just a little bit more of a fresh feel, and I don't know, like I really like how that like his guitar just kind of like I said, it's very atmospheric and just refreshing in a lot of ways.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, first of all, that Ryan Colwell record is one of my favorite things I've ever heard. Ethan is an incredible producer and Ryan's an incredible artist. And I feel like those two together made something so super cool. I will still listen to it on the regular. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. And even on my first record, you know, like you were just saying, you know, I lived in Nashville, grew up in Nashville, and it was really important to me to have people play on my record that weren't playing on everything else, you know, for the exact reason you said, because people have a voice, and also a lot of people in Nashville, it becomes kind of like a job to them, and they go in and they just throw down the track as fast as they can. And it's not the same creative process. And so for me, you know, making music, bringing in people like Ethan or Adam Wright, who played on both my records and I write a lot with, you know, I also wrote with 3 of the people playing on my record, you know, and so I'm really inspired by people who are artists and have a really distinct voice. Like they're all great guitar players, but they're not really session players as much, you know. And I love that because they have a really distinct voice, and I feel like it brings something unique to the music. And I love to listen to all their music and all the stuff they make, and just really inspired by the other stuff that they do as well.
This episode is sponsored by Wicker's Mesquite Smoked Jalapeno Jelly. It's owned and operated by my buddy Wes Wicker, who makes the jelly in small batches for the best quality and freshness. He smokes the peppers with mesquite and uses pure cane sugar to make the jelly. What you get is this great blend of smoky, sweet, and spicy. It's addictively savory. For those uninitiated, Wicker's is a great addition to any chef's kitchen. Part of what makes Wicker's so great is just how versatile it really is. For starters, it makes a great meat glaze. Throw it on a batch of hot wings, use it on some pork ribs, some pork chops, really whatever you can think of. Eat it on biscuits, cornbread, bagels, or toast. Throw it on a ham or turkey sandwich. Another super simple but effective way is to get some cream cheese, throw some Wickers on top, and then grab your favorite cracker. Wickers is currently stocked at a handful of places in Lubbock and on the South Plains, as well as some Fort Worth and DFW locations. But the easiest way to get your hands on a jar is to head over to wickerstx.com. That's WICKERSTX.com. I'll throw a link into the show notes for good measure. They currently come in 2 varieties, original and now hot, if you need just a little bit more kick in your bite. You can order anything from 1 jar to a case of 12, whatever fits your needs. Again, that's wickerstx.com. Okay, back to the show.
Now on this record right here, there's a couple of moments where, like, you know, I guess like it's what I would call like a balance. You have like a lot of these vulnerable moments, this like real raw intimacy, but then also at the same time, you know, there's these really you have some swagger, you know, you have like a little bit of some, you know, attitude. Is that something that you think about, like that you're trying to balance with, or does it just kind of, you know, after the fact you go, oh yeah, there's the multiple sides of Aubrie Sellers? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know, when I'm writing, I just write whatever's coming to me. And I think the narrowing down process definitely comes when I'm putting the record together. And, you know, I went in to make this record with over 20 songs and didn't know what I was going to put on. You know, I had a strong feeling about most of the songs that ended up on there, you know, but, you know, a few extras that I wasn't sure about and didn't know, you know, what was going to end up on there. And I think I'm a very emotional writer and a very personal writer. You know, I write everything from a kind of personal perspective and an emotional perspective. So if I'm feeling really strongly about something, you know, it could be that I'm angry or whatever else. And I think a lot of those kind of maybe tongue in cheek or kind of more rowdy songs come from that. And then same thing for the intimate moments. And so, yeah, I think when putting the record together, there's a little bit of balance in there, but a lot of that I think just happens naturally with the songs that you're feeling inspired by. And you know, I love that stuff, especially when we're making records, to do some of those more intimate songs. And I used to be really uncomfortable playing those types of songs live. It's really fun to me to kind of rock out live and play some of the more rock stuff live. But like Haven't Even Kissed Me Yet on this record is a super intimate one, and one I've been playing pretty much solo acoustic on tour, which is something I don't normally do. And so it's definitely a process after the fact, just becoming comfortable with playing some of that stuff live that's felt so intimate to me.
Yeah, that one specifically, like the, I don't know if I could say like it's like a flash of like Polaroids or something, but it feels very like where, a lot of songs, I guess, like where you can pull or you can draw from old experiences or feelings. That one feels like, that it's exactly like a specific experience without like adding drama or detail or like fabricated detail to make it bigger. That one just felt like really just, I don't know, intensely raw and like highly emotional.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a true story. And, you know, like you said, there's no embellishments to it. And you know, I worry sometimes about songs like that because I think, is anyone else going to connect with something that was such a literal or personal story? But it seems like people really lean into that. And I feel like they're able to imprint their own emotions and whatever overlay their own experiences onto it, you know? And so it's been one that I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about. I think people have really connected with it for that reason. And you know, it has kind of like a little bit of a different song structure, you know, as far as like, it's just so simple in that way, but I wanted it to feel like I just sat down and wrote it in one sitting on the couch, because that's what I did, you know, and I feel like that's what gives it that feeling, because it's just, that's how it honestly went down, you know?
Yeah, it has a very cinematic kind of feel too. And this is a little bit, like the story, this is not anything like the story remotely, but what it reminded me of is the way, have you ever watched what's the, I'm blanking on it now, Eyes Wide Shut?
I actually have never seen that movie. I know what it is, obviously.
Okay, so like Nicole Kidman in that movie is like explain or telling a story to Tom Cruise's character, and they're like a married couple, and it's a very, very intense scene, but like they're just in their bedroom, and she's telling this story to Tom, who's like she's sitting on the floor, he's sitting on like the edge of the bed, and they had just smoked some pot, and like just the way she told the story really is like, it's very soft and very intense. And that's what it reminded me of mostly, is that scene. But the thing is that like, if you go watch it, you're gonna go, well, that's not any, like, the story is like nothing. The story is like that tells him is like the how she almost cheated on him once, and like, but like it's a very, like, just the way how soft she is like
Yeah.
a lot of the things that I don't know, like you pull from that song.
I'll have to watch it for sure. No,
yeah.
I get it. It's the vibe of it. That's cool.
Yeah. Now, like the one question, I thought of this earlier because I was listening to the record. The very beginning of that song, it sounds similar to "Kiss Me" by Sixpence None the Richer. Is
funny.
that? I'm assuming like that's not like on purpose, or maybe
it wasn't intentional.
Okay.
I had someone else said that to me, and I thought, no, it wasn't intentional, but maybe I should pretend like it was because it'll be like an homage to that song, or like Stranger Things. What do they call the other world? It's like the flip side
down.
of that song.
Yeah. I don't know. Like it's because it's, I guess that song right there is a little bit more upbeat. But
For
like
sure.
there's like these little, like, I don't know, like the atmosphere, it feels very, very similar. But and then I didn't know, just because like they're both about "Kiss Me." So
I wonder if it didn't have the words "kiss me" in it, if anyone would say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now also on this record, you go into like mental health and anxiety and some like really intimate aspects of yourself that aren't, like, I think like most people think of like intimacy as relationship wise, but like those are very intimate and very vulnerable places as well. Is it easy for you to write about stuff like that, or is that part of like more or less helping you cope with anxiety and etc.?
Yeah, I think, when I'm writing songs, like I said earlier, I'm not really thinking about, because I don't ever have to play it for anyone. You know what I mean? When I'm writing it, if I choose so later. So I think it's more when I'm putting together a record, or maybe even when I'm releasing the record, that I start thinking maybe this is too intimate. I don't know. But for me, yeah, it comes from a place of writing. Everybody says the old cliche that writing is like therapy, but it really is. I mean, if you're, sometimes it's just a way to express yourself and get some of that stuff out. I'm a huge journaler too. So, that's been a way over my life to kind of just like get things out of yourself and put them on paper or put them in a song, really, for some reason, seems to kind of release some of that energy. And so, yeah, I wrote Worried Mind about my anxiety. And then I also wrote an accompanying piece in the Huffington Post about it that was kind of goes into a little more detail. And it's just been something that, I've dealt with my whole life. Looking back, I think didn't realize it, growing up, that I was like an overly anxious individual until I got older and it became more prominent. But yeah, I think the reason I write songs like that and love to play them live is just because that's another one that people have really mentioned a lot to me, because, they'll either say it's something they've been through or something. I had somebody come up and say, I'm going to play this song for my wife because she goes through this. And, it's just really nice to know that when you share those experiences, it can maybe help someone, or at least help them know that they're not alone in that experience.
Yeah. Like it's, I don't know. Like I feel like, I was talking with someone the other day about how, now this is like coming from like a male perspective, how like growing up, like, you're kind of like never told to like express any kind of like those doubts in yourself when it comes to anything like that. But like as this newer generation, it's been a little bit more easy to to talk about therapy and talk about being like not a quote unquote, strong man, or just a strong individual.
For sure.
I think like it's very important and kind of like, essential to, for other people to understand that like everyone kind of goes through these things, and that like, I think for so many people, songwriters and artists are heroes, and you can easily get like a sense that, these people are, just, they're superheroes. They're not flawed in any kind of way. And just, I guess like, pulling back that curtain it can be, essential and very important and profound for people in their lives.
For sure. Like you said, normalizing it, I think, is a really good thing, because especially therapy seems like such a normal thing to me. And I hope that it becomes more and more that for other people, it becomes like going to the doctor or whatever else, because I think it's something that everyone can benefit from, and I think the more we talk about it, the more people realize, oh, this is normal. Other people go through it, and they're not ashamed to talk about it or go get help or whatever they need. So, like you said, yeah, it's like, and of course, gender stereotypes can play into that too. And so the more we talk about that can kind of lend itself to fixing some of those issues, hopefully, and help everybody just get better and be kinder to one another and feel more secure and safe.
Yeah, it's strange because like, I guess also forever I've always heard, and you'll see a lot of people on social media talk about how, listening to music is the best thing that can happen when they're going through these rough times. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. But you'll also see them talk out the other side of their mouth and act as if like mental health or, even admitting to having these hard, like going through struggles is like a weakness or something. And it's like, no, like you're finding a way to cope by listening to like music that makes you feel better or like makes you feel like you're being understood. So I don't know, sometimes maybe like talk with somebody or like, write all this, I don't know, like find something that works for you also, it's
Totally. And I think, like you said, people probably have coping mechanisms that they don't even realize are what, coping mechanisms. And so, people I think don't understand that to varying degrees, these are things that everybody goes through, and they just, may not understand how much or how little, and they may not be aware. They may have grown up in a family or something that didn't kind of, like you said, encourage talking about stuff like that. And so I think a lot of people kind of suppress it until it becomes too much to bear later on in life. So it's good to pay attention and be open to these things, and kind of watch for patterns and just be aware of what helps you and kind of what you need, and not put other people down for what they need.
Yeah, I'm 100% sure like it's one of those things where, for forever you would see like these guys just drop dead from a heart attack at 50, and it's like, well, oh my gosh, what happened? And it's like, no, there's probably because they were holding literally everything in without, talking to somebody. So
yes. And like you said, it's a generational thing too. Like,
mm-hmm.
It used to be much more, people used to be much more closed off about that, for whatever reason. And definitely think it's, as time is going on, people are opening up more and more.
Yeah. Now, as for like, obviously, I guess I'm going to make a little break here. Like I tried to tell myself before. So like, for you, like what is like your best space for songwriting? Like what do you try and like have it, even like if it's not necessarily a routine, but do you try and like create a certain, I don't know, space for songwriting, certain like notebook or what have you?
I don't have any routine. The only thing I do fairly consistently is I just have a running list of notes in my phone, or I'll record little snippets on my voice memos. Those are the kind of the only things I do consistently, as far as just, I had a little melody idea or had a little line idea or whatever, and I'll write those down. And And then when I'm feeling inspired to write, maybe go back and use some of those pieces, especially if I'm going to co-write with someone else. And, but I'm not a huge co-writer. I've done a lot of co-writing in the past, as far as like the kind of more traditional go to your 11 a.m. appointment in Nashville and write with, 2 other writers or whatever. But for me, it's more about, like I said earlier, writing with the people that I love and love to work with, and feels more like a collaboration in that way. And so, I don't have any specific routine. I tend to write just when inspiration strikes, or if I feel like, let's say, 6 months from now, I'm feeling like, okay, I'm feeling kind of inspired. I like maybe have an idea for a new direction for an album or whatever. Then I'll kind of get a fire under me and start writing more intentionally, but it does happen for me in kind of bursts more so than consistently.
Yeah. Are you like a notebook writer, or is it, do you have the laptop out, or do you, what is the,
it's different every time. I have written songs in notebooks. I have some, like a lot of the songs on the first record that are written in notebooks, but then a lot of the time I write on my computer or my iPad or whatever else, and it's changed over time. I used to have a app on my iPad that I don't even think exists anymore. So I was actually trying to play some of the files off there the other day and couldn't even get them to play. So be careful with the kind of technology that you use, because it could be defunct later. But
yeah.
but I'm not a huge notebook writer, just because I travel so much. It's hard to carry a bunch of crap with me all the time, so I try to keep it pretty light. But sometimes I do. Sometimes I think I mix it up, because for me, like, okay, I get out the pen and paper this time, and maybe it kind of unlocks something different in your brain, And the same thing with a new environment or a new, person you're working with or whatever. I feel like mixing it up for me is the key to keeping things fresh and keeping things new.
Yeah, it's this weird, like, I guess, like the weird balance between like romanticism and practicality as far as like how you write. Because it's obviously so much easier to write on a computer, but then also at the same time, are they going to, someone had said this the other day, it was like, I just can't imagine them like, the Country Music Hall of Fame museum, like having someone's laptop in there,
Totally. Exactly.
Like
and I've had actually lyrics in the Hall of Fame, and they were written in a notebook, so like you said, they used my lyrics for Light of Day from a notebook because I wrote them in a notebook, but some of my other songs I definitely did not. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think it would be kind of funny to see, like,
I need my computer, so you're going to have to use a fake one.
Yeah. Yeah. Just here's a jump drive that you can, something like that. I don't know, a Dropbox link.
Yeah.
I think like that. What reminds me of that is I don't even know where maybe like Reddit or something, like some kid sending in a Santa Claus letter with like a hyperlink address, but it being like of a photo or something. So it just had like a lot of random numbers and letters and stuff. Maybe just like a photo of that and be like, this is, I don't know, Amarillo by morning. Yeah. I don't know, something like that.
This episode is sponsored by Smith Iron and Design. It's owned and operated by one of my good friends, Aaron Smith, and his dad, Sonny. As the name implies, Smith Iron and Design specializes in creating custom metal and woodwork. They have a vast array of metal signs that are perfect wall decor that'll tie our room together. They design everything from welcome signs to family crests, flags, and Texas cutouts. They have a series of these metal wreaths that are perfect for your front door, and you are able to change them out depending on the season. Are you a sports fan? Well, there's nothing better than having a giant logo of your team on the wall of your den or office. When it comes to signage, the possibilities are really endless. What you should really do, though, is head over to smithironanddesign.com to get a look at their vast portfolio. That's smithironanddesign.com. I'll throw a link into the show notes as well. They don't just do signs either. Some of the smaller items are custom bottle openers and keychains. Then they also have bookshelves, TV stands, nightstands, and fire pits. You know, it was about a year ago, Aaron built me a custom shelf. I needed something new to store some of my vinyl, and everything I had come across, either the shelves weren't big enough for LPs, or it looked too bland or cheaply made, or, to be perfectly honest, too expensive. So I wound up talking with Aaron, and about a week later, I was able to pick up this custom shelf unit that's just been amazing. It's incredibly sturdy, has a bit of a rustic feel. In my opinion, one of the best parts was just having so much control in the process. You can get them as tall as you want with the shelves at the perfect depth and length. Again, for me, this was for storing vinyl, so they had to be a certain height and depth. I've been thinking about getting a custom bookshelf companion piece soon as well. Now, for the most part, they primarily serve the Lubbock area and the South Plains, but for some of their smaller pieces, they're able to ship nationwide as well. Again, smithironanddesign.com. Now back to the show.
Yeah, like I guess like what also like I was gonna ask about you mentioned doing like the 11 a.m. Nashville rides. Do you kind of like think of like, oh, here are the, I don't know, 2 or 3 ideas I have that maybe work in this, or like what do you do to prep for something like that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I always have my running list of ideas in my phone, have those available. And then thinking about a co-write, I think sometimes you can go in, like, I've found that for myself, because I don't write for other artists, I really only write for myself, that it helps especially if I'm writing with a newer person, to have a song like maybe half finished or almost done. Like One Pound's Trash on this record, I'd pretty much written a lot of already before I wrote with Brendan Benson, and of course he brought a lot to the song as well, but I had never written with him before, and that's a little bit different because that's not your typical go sit down and co-write. I mean, this was me seeking out an artist that I love and want to write with. It's a little different than if your publishing company or label or somebody sets you up to go write with a stranger that's a professional full-time songwriter. You know what I mean? It's just it feels like a different vibe. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I always have ideas with me, but hopefully the person you're writing with does as well, and you just kind of go in open-minded and run through some ideas that you have, some ideas that they have, and kind of just feel the room and feel what everybody's feeling. And that's just kind of happens organically in that way. And people are just different. Everybody writes differently. Some people are really impatient and like to write really quickly, and I'm more of a slow writer for sure. And also, like, if I'm not feeling something that's going down in the room, I tend to just kind of shut down. And one thing I've learned about myself for sure is that lyrics have to be really driven by something that I've been through, or something that is said the way that I would say it, otherwise I just have a hard time singing it. And so for that reason, I think I haven't gotten many songs, if any, looking back, that have been on my records that came from those kind of sessions. A lot of my stuff that I end up recording tends to be stuff either I wrote by myself or wrote with people who I've written with a lot, or artists that I admire, people that I just really feel like I vibe with and feel like more of a musical collaboration rather than a writing appointment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it feels like probably like the word like I would maybe describe the most is like there has to be a level of trust, because it's you're kind of like, if you, I don't know, like I not necessarily like that you're wasting an idea, because you can always rewrite that idea later, but like, are you wasting that time, or are you like, what if there's not going to be something out of this, like, is it, I don't know, like it feels like you said like having maybe like a song already kind of like not all the way finished, but going in a certain direction. That first time, it's like almost like a testing process, if like, this is going to work, or you know what I mean, or like you passed or you failed. I don't know, like it's such a, because it feels so weird, because like I would almost, I mean, like there's people who do write articles together on something, right? But that's so rare. It feels like that's something that you're like giving up so much power when it becomes at least half or something like that. I don't know. It's I don't know.
I've seen people write books together, and I've actually read a book that was written, like a fiction book that was written by two people, and I was like, how in the world? I can't even imagine how. It's so difficult to write with people that you know, a song that's 3 minutes long. I can't imagine writing an entire novel together. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting process. And like you said, I mean, you just kind of have to feel it out. And sometimes something magically comes out of it, or some, you know, it doesn't. But I've just learned about myself, the kind of things that the circumstances, I guess, that I tend to get more songs out that I like. And so that typical route hasn't really been one that seemed to serve me musically.
Yeah. Do you try and like hang out beforehand?
I mean, I write with a lot of people that I know from whatever, you know, from seeing around, or maybe they were at my publishing company or whatever else. I mean, of course, but some, you know, occasionally too, I've written a good bit with people that I don't know very well, just because people wanted me to write with them or recommended them or whatever else. And so I've been in all circumstances.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I found like the co-writing world maybe like more interesting than like even just songwriting in general, because it just feels like it's so many, like obviously it has to do with like just that trust, like I was saying, like egos and like just the chemistry between people, and just I don't know, like even just simple things, you know, that like you said, like people wanting to just like do it really, really quickly, and then other people being a lot more of a slow burner process, or I don't know. It's just, I don't know. Maybe that's the book that I'll write with somebody, is like the co-writing, co-author book. I don't know.
That would be funny. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's hard. Like I said earlier, I write for my records, you know, so it's very different than someone who writes full time as a songwriter for other artists. And it's becoming kind of a dying art in that way, because you can't really make money doing that anymore unless you're writing for radio, which is a very narrow, you know, platform. There's only kind of a couple things you can write for that platform. And so when most of the songwriters in Nashville, which I'm not even in Nashville anymore, so this doesn't really apply to me anymore because I don't really exist in that world. But when I did, you know, it feels like, you know, they're writing, they're kind of, too much business bleeds into it. Does that make sense? Like, it feels like you feel uncomfortable because you're like, this person doesn't want to write a song for my record. They want to write a song, you know, that to get on the radio or to make a name for themselves as a songwriter, to make money, which is totally a valid thing to do. But, you know, that's not really where my head's at when I'm making music. And so just for that reason, it felt like, you know, it didn't really line up with what I'm trying to do as an artist and what I love about music.
Yeah. Like, obviously, like, I think it's very, very easy to just, you know, get on the soapbox and just talk about how bad, you know, top 40 country music radio is, top 40, whatever the pop music is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, there's definitely like, I feel like we could all like just get really angry about it, and but it's so exhausting. But like, there is obviously something to criticize about it. It feels like so many songs feel like it's just like the algorithm of like what is popular with people like 18 to 25, and like, you know, you have to use keywords, and then I don't even know if that's really even the case, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it feels like an algorithm of
Totally.
These are the things, like the 6 things we can sing about, and
exactly, and we'll just recycle it and just put it in a different order 400 times.
mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
But you know, and that's fine if that's what people want to do. Cool. It just doesn't speak to me, and it's never been what I'm passionate about. And I think growing up around the music business has made me even more kind of averse to it in a way, rather than the opposite, So yeah, I've been lucky to grow up around family and people who really love music for music's sake. And even if even if we weren't doing it professionally, we would still be doing it just because we love music and care about it being real and honest, And so that's where, my inspiration comes from. And so just, I don't sometimes align with that world for that reason. And that's fine. Everybody has their own thing. It's just not my thing.
Yeah. No, I would pretty much agree, even though I didn't grow up around there. And I was going to ask about that though. Like, how is that? I guess like how aware were you growing up that like you had family that were, just obviously famous people, or like just like super involved in like the music business.
Yeah, I mean, I was really immersed in it. I wasn't, I know seeing other kids who grew up with parents who are in the music business, people really are to varying degrees involved. Maybe they grew up in one place going to traditional school their whole lives and maybe were more separated from it. Maybe they had one parent that stayed home or whatever. I didn't have that. Everyone in my family does music, and I grew up on the road on a tour bus, homeschooled, So I was very immersed in it. When I was with my dad, I was riding in his car to go while he goes in and sings demos or goes to play with Ricky Skaggs, And then when I'm with my mom, we're on tour and she's opening up for George Strait. And then she's coming back on the bus and getting out the tackle box full of my school supplies and doing school. You know what I mean? So it's like I was just around it all the time. And then, my mom got remarried and my stepdad is a producer and the publisher. And so I saw him build his publishing company from literally a basement room to what it is now, and so I've just been very involved and around it and very aware of all of it,
Yeah. Like I was talking with somebody the other day about how it would feel like, I guess like Nashville is like very similar to, like a comparison to like Las Vegas, where it feels like this is like what each of those cities is known for. Like there's where like almost everyone is within that realm of what it's not like a city like New York where there's just so many different kind of industries happening that like you almost everyone is touched by this one, I don't know, like octopus of, like the legs go everywhere. Right.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, like it just seems like it would feel like growing up around Nashville would be where like you just kind of like know, I don't know, like I guess what I'm going with is that like growing up you would realize that there's like so many different levels of not necessarily fame but like of success and of like what the music industry is. It's not just like not everyone's Alan Jackson and George Strait and Reba, It's there's just so many other jobs that you don't really think about because they're not on a tour poster,
Totally.
or on the back of a
Yes.
CD or something. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I was around all that, when my mom didn't get a record deal until I was 7 years old or something like that, 6 or 7, and my dad was playing, with Ricky Skaggs, and we lived in a little apartment in Hendersonville, and like I said, I saw Frank build his business from the ground up too. So it's just kind of like I've experienced and been around every aspect of this business. Really, I feel like I have, and so, and what's ironic though about that is that it's so different now. It's so different now from even when I was growing up. So, so I still feel like I'm learning so much every time I'm doing anything in this business.
Yeah. How much did you feel like that because obviously like your sound is not a neo-traditional country sound or like it's more new Nashville as far as like you mentioned Brendan, the Raking Tours, and obviously there's a real garage rock kind of aspect to what kind of music you make. Did you feel like I don't want to say rebelled against like what like especially like your mother's sound or something like that, but how much of was it you finding your own lane without like, I guess people thinking that like the only reason you're a songwriter is because your family ties.
Totally. Well, like I said, first of all, music is like in our blood on a different level than just the business part of it. But yeah, like, you know, growing up, I was around a lot of bluegrass and a lot of traditional music and traditional country music. And I love that stuff. And that's a huge influence on me. And I thought when I was a teenager, and still think someday I'll make a bluegrass record, because I play a little banjo, and Ralph Stanley's my favorite singer. And so, I'm really influenced by all of that stuff. But also, when I was probably in middle school to teenage years, listened to a lot of rock music, not just traditional rock like Led Zeppelin and CCR, but that era of rock with like the Strokes and the White Stripes and Franz Ferdinand. I love their first record, and so those two kind of eras of rock really influenced me as well. And I love Nirvana and that era too. So a lot of it was just truly me sitting down, writing, seeing what came out of me naturally, and then also just the stuff that I really love, and making sure that I was representing all of the aspects of music that I love, and so I think it all kind of came together and created this new thing, and I feel like it's really representative of me, and I think some people can see that as especially on the business side of things, as a flaw, because you're not fitting really neatly into a category that has a built-in fan base, can be harder to kind of build up your career when your music is living in its own space. but I feel like to do anything else would not be representative of who I am. I love traditional country music. I love bluegrass music. I don't think doing just one narrow thing full time would be representative of all my influences and who I am as an artist and what I love. I think I've got a little too much fire and edge to be doing that and feel like I'm doing everything I want to do.
Yeah. What's weird, I feel, is that, okay, so like you'll see this on people's Facebook, on like the pages that they have, whatever, insert artists here, and then like under their influences they'll list like 150 people and you're like, no, you're confusing like being influenced and just liking those bands. Like you're probably
Yeah.
like your influence, like, no, of course, like I think like you can go either way of like you're informed by just popular music in general, you know what I mean? Like that's, but
Yeah.
I find it so strange where you see like, especially here in Texas, you see Towns Van Zandt and Guy Clark listed under everyone's influence, and I'm like, I don't hear that. I don't know what what you're talking about, but
Yeah, I think you can draw a pretty clear line to some of my, like, I can name the people that really, like, I love Steve Earle. I love Led Zeppelin. I love, like I said, all the music Jack White produced. I love the Alison Krauss and Robert Plant record. And I think, as much as my music, I think drawing all those influence together created something new, but I think you can also hear those things in my music and hear how much I really listen to those records. Cause I'm somebody who I do listen to a ton of music across all genres, but like you said, there's certain things that kind of dug into my soul and really, really are my favorite. Buddy and Julie Miller, probably one of my biggest influences, so yeah, those are things that I can feel like definitely directly affected the kind of music I make.
yeah, you mentioned like the Raising Sand, like that is like just a again like a very atmospheric record. And what's interesting though too about just going back to Led Zeppelin is, yeah, like obviously there is like the rock and roll, if we're just like even just looking at like the song Rock and Roll Ride, or like Immigrant Song being like these hard rock songs, but like obviously like those guys were like so influenced by British folk music, and it's not too far away from bluegrass. So even
I totally agree, and I feel like there's a common thread I can kind of draw through like bluegrass music that I love, like the really raw, good stuff like Ralph Stanley, and then like even blues music that I was influenced by like Robert Johnson and that kind of stuff, to me, that all kind of has a similar raw, like just super emotionally soul driven music, but also simple. Like the songs and the music are so simple, especially in blues and bluegrass. And that really influenced me as well, I think, with songwriting and just the kind of songs that I've listened to naturally, or the kind of songs that I write, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's sometimes so funny how, like, I think sometimes we can like overcomplicate stuff, right? Like sometimes like the best music, like just think about, you mentioned Robert Johnson or like Hank Williams. They captured a very specific raw emotion, and sometimes you can't get any better than that. Just them
Just saying
and a
it simply, yeah, and just it's about for me, and that's people. You know, when people say like, "Are you driven by lyrics or melody?" Like, I'm a huge melody person because I think that's what makes music music. And so for me, it's more about the impression that you're putting on a song when you're listening, or that you're getting from the song when you're listening. You know, if you know that band Sigur Rós, I'm going to say their name wrong. They're from Iceland or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They made a whole record where their lyrics were gibberish, like, which sounds silly, but it's a beautiful record, and they're not saying any real words. You know what I mean? And so I think there's something deeper than just being overly wordy and flowery with your lyrics that speaks to me as an artist. But I know that's not how everyone loves to consume music or listen to music. But I love music for music's sake, and I love simple stuff.
Yeah, like one of my favorite bands is Explosions in the Sky, and of course, like, you know, that's just post rock. And I think like the thing about it though that people have a hard time, because I don't know, like I think that people can draw and feel like the emotional swell of that kind of music, but it's hard to describe why. You know what I mean? Like it's because like even like with me, like it's sometimes I'm like you're just kind of at a loss of like why you have this emotional pull from a song without any lyrics. You know, it's very easy to just like, oh, the reason I like this song, or it, you know, it makes me feel this way is because of these lines. You know, it's so easy to make those connections, while sometimes like if it's just music, it's hard to just to describe it.
Totally.
So.
And it's like when you listen to music like that and you have like a moment with yourself and the music, it's like, yeah, it's indescribable. That's like the magic of it, you know? And so yeah, that's the stuff, you know, like driving late at night, listening to a song that, like you said, the melody touches you or whatever. I just feel like there's some magic there, and there's no need to explain it. It's just, who knows where it comes from. It's great, you know?
Yeah. It's just, it's the mystery of it all, right? It's just I don't know. It's just something, I don't know. It's a part of me, like as a journalist, wants to know exactly why, but then also I'm like, just let it be. Like, you don't have to figure out everything.
Totally.
So anyways, yeah, it's been really great talking with you about your music and just music in general.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it feels
glad
like
I got to speak to you. I would like to talk on Twitter or whatever.
All right, guys, thanks for listening to New Slang. Be sure to check out Aubrie Sellers' latest album, Far From Home. Check out episode sponsors Smith Iron and Design and Wicker's Jalapeno Jelly. I'll see you next week for more New Slang episodes.